The desert wind carried sand across Dr. Han Jiho's face as he stood at the edge of the excavation site. Below him, 30 feet down in the earth, his team worked under bright lights. The sun had set hours ago, but the work never stopped. Not when they were this close to something big. Dr. Han called engineer Lee Hyunwoo from the bottom of the pit. "You need to see this." Jiho climbed down the metal ladder, his boots hitting the hard-packed earth. The Gobi Desert had kept its secrets buried for millions of years. 3 months ago, satellite scans had found something strange deep underground. Something that shouldn't exist. "What did you find?" Jiho asked, walking over to where Hyunwoo stood with his equipment. "The readings are off the charts," Hyunwoo said, pointing his scanner at the wall. "There's a massive hollow space behind this rock. And the material? It's not natural." Captain Park Mina appeared beside them. Her military uniform somehow still clean despite the dusty conditions. "How massive are we talking?" "Big enough to fit a football stadium," Hyunwoo replied. "Maybe bigger." Professor Kim Tae-won looked up from his translation work nearby. Ancient symbols covered the rock wall in front of him, carved so deep they looked fresh. "These markings are older than any civilization we know about. But they're not random. They're definitely a language." Dr. Choi Yoonji approached with her quantum field detector beeping rapidly. "The energy readings are incredible. Whatever's behind this wall is still active after all this time." Jiho felt his heart racing. This was what every archaeologist dreamed of, a discovery that could change everything they knew about human history. "How long to break through?" "Give me 2 hours, Hyunwoo said, already setting up his drilling equipment. As the drill bit into the ancient stone, Jiho couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to cross a line they couldn't uncross. The symbols on the wall seemed to watch them work. Taewon had been trying to translate them for weeks, but the language was unlike anything in the databases. "There," Hyunwoo called out as the drill broke through. Cool air rushed out of the hole, carrying a strange metallic smell. "We're in." They widened the opening enough for a person to crawl through. Jiho went first, his headlamp cutting through the darkness beyond. What he saw made him stop breathing. The chamber was enormous, its walls made of smooth black crystal that reflected their lights like mirrors. But it wasn't empty. 12 pedestals stood in a perfect circle around the room's center. On each pedestal sat an object that clearly didn't belong on Earth. "My God," whispered Mina as she crawled through after him. The others followed, their lights dancing across the impossible scene. Each object was different. One looked like a sphere of liquid metal that moved without being touched. Another appeared to be made of crystallized light that pulsed with its own inner glow. A third seemed to shift between solid and gas, never settling on one form. "These aren't human," Yoonji said, her voice barely a whisper. Her detector was going crazy, showing energy readings that shouldn't be possible. "No," Jiho agreed, walking slowly toward the center of the circle. "They're not." As they approached the pedestals, symbols began appearing on the crystal walls around them. Not carved symbols like outside, but glowing ones that wrote themselves in the air. The writing was different on each wall, 12 completely different languages. "It's like the room is reacting to us," Taewon said, frantically taking pictures of the symbols. "Each wall shows a different writing system. But look at the patterns." Now he was right. Even though the symbols were all different, the patterns were strangely similar. "The same rhythm, the same structure. Can you read any of it?" Mina asked. "Give me time," Taewon replied, already deep in his work. Jiho walked to the center of the circle and looked up. High above them, the crystal ceiling showed what looked like a star map. But the stars were moving, showing the galaxy as it changed over time. Millions of years compressed into seconds. "Look at this," Yoonji called from one of the pedestals. The object there looked like a small sun, warm to the touch but not burning. "It's responding to my presence." The energy output just doubled. One by one, the objects began to activate as the team spread out around the chamber. The liquid metal sphere started forming shapes, geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The crystallized light began projecting images into the air. Scenes of space, of planets, of civilizations they'd never seen. "Dr. Han," Taewon's voice was tight with excitement and fear. "I'm getting fragments of translation. The same message appears to be written in all 12 languages." "What does it say?" "It's a warning." "They're all warnings. About something called the Sleepers." As if responding to the words, the chamber filled with a low humming sound. The star map above them changed, zooming in on a dark region of space where no stars shone. "Warning about what exactly?" Mina demanded. her hand moving instinctively toward her weapon. Taewan's face went pale as more translations appeared on his tablet. They say never to wake them up. The sleepers destroyed everything. Whole civilizations went silent. Anyone who fought them just disappeared. The humming grew louder. The objects on the pedestals began glowing brighter, and suddenly the chamber was full of holographic images. 12 different alien species, all clearly intelligent, all clearly afraid. They were showing the same scenes over and over. Vast shapes moving through space, planets going dark, entire star systems falling silent. This is a message, Jiho realized. They all came here to leave a message for whoever found this place. But why here? Yenwu asked. Why Earth? The answer came from the crystallized light object, which projected a clear image of Earth as it was millions of years ago. Then the image fast-forwarded, showing the planet's evolution, the rise of life, and finally the emergence of humans. They knew. Yunji whispered. Somehow they knew that someday an intelligent species would evolve on this planet. They were leaving the message for us. What exactly are these sleepers? Mina asked. More symbols appeared on the walls as Taewan worked frantically to translate. Ancient beings, older than any of these 12 civilizations, they consume consciousness itself, not just killing, absorbing entire species into some kind of collective mind. The chamber showed them one final image, the location of the sleepers. A region of space humanity had never explored, where their radio telescopes detected nothing but empty void. They're still out there, Jiho said, understanding flooding through him, sleeping. And these 12 species, they all came here to warn us never to wake them up. But how did they all find Earth? Hyunwoo wondered. What made this planet special? The answer was written in the final symbols that appeared. Earth wasn't chosen randomly. It was selected because it sat at the intersection of 12 different hyperspace routes. Every advanced civilization would eventually find it. The planet was the perfect place to leave a message that would survive until someone was ready to understand it. We need to contact the governments immediately, Mina said. This changes everything we know about life in the universe. But as they prepared to leave the chamber, Yoonji's detector started screaming warnings. The energy levels are spiking. Something's wrong. The objects on the pedestals were glowing so brightly now that it hurt to look at them. The star map above showed the dark region beginning to pulse with a faint light. Did we trigger something? Jiho asked. But no one had an answer. As they climbed back through the hole into the desert night, none of them noticed the change in the star map. In the dark region where the sleepers rested, something that had been dormant for millions of years was beginning to stir. The warning had been delivered. But humanity's greatest strength and their greatest weakness was that they never could resist investigating a mystery. Far above them, radio telescopes around the world began picking up the first signals ever detected from the void sector. Signals that pulsed like a massive heartbeat, growing stronger with each passing hour. 3 weeks after the discovery, the world had changed. Every major government knew about the chamber beneath the Gobi Desert. Secret meetings happened in windowless rooms while news channels reported strange energy readings from observatories around the globe. Dr. Han Jiho stood in the new laboratory built over the excavation site. The chamber below had been sealed off, but not before they removed the 12 alien artifacts for study. Each object now sat in its own isolation unit, while teams of scientists worked around the clock. Any progress on the translations? Jiho asked Professor Kim Taewan, who hadn't slept properly in days. Too much progress, Taewan replied, his eyes red from staring at screens. Every language tells the same story. 12 different civilizations all wiped out by something they call the sleepers. But there's more. Hidden messages within the messages. Captain Park Mina entered the lab, her phone still buzzing with calls from military officials worldwide. The UN Security Council is meeting again tomorrow. They want answers we don't have. What kind of answers are they looking for? Dr. Choi Yoonji asked, looking up from her quantum analysis of one of the artifacts. They want to know if these sleepers are still a threat, Mina said. And they want to know what we're going to do about it. Engineer Lee Hyunwoo approached from his workstation, where he'd been reverse engineering the alien technology. I think I found something. These artifacts aren't just warning messages. They're also tools. He led them to his main console, where holographic displays showed the internal structure of the crystallized light artifact. Look at this. It's not just showing us images of the past. It's a communication device, still functional after millions of years. Communication with who? Jiho asked. That's what we need to find out, Hyunwoo said. But I think I can modify it to send signals to the coordinates they showed us. The void sector. Mina stepped forward. Absolutely not. The warning was clear. Don't wake them up. But we need to know if they're still out there, Yunji argued. For all we know, they died millions of years ago. The threat might be gone. Taewon looked up from his translations. Actually, there's something else. The hidden messages I mentioned. They're not just warnings. They're also instructions. The room fell silent. Outside, they could hear helicopters landing as more officials arrived. Instructions for what? Jiho asked. How to put them back to sleep if they ever wake up, Taewon said quietly. Each civilization contributed part of a solution. Together, the 12 species found a way to stop the sleepers, but what? The cost was everything. All 12 civilizations had to sacrifice themselves to make it work. Mina's phone rang again. She answered it, spoke briefly, then hung up with a grim expression. The president wants a briefing in 6 hours. Along with the leaders of Russia, China, and the European Union. They're not taking no for an answer. What do we tell them? Hyunwoo asked. The truth, Jiho said. That we found evidence of an ancient threat, and we don't know if it's still dangerous. Or, Yoonji said slowly, we could find out for sure. They all looked at her. She was staring at the quantum energy readings from the artifacts. The energy signatures are incredibly sophisticated, she continued. These beings understood physics in ways we're just beginning to grasp. Dark energy manipulation, quantum consciousness fields, matter-energy conversion at scales we can't imagine. You're talking about building a probe, Mina realized. Not just any probe, Hyunwoo said, his engineering mind already working. We could use their own technology. Build something that could reach the void sector and send back real information. The warnings were clear, Mina repeated. Don't disturb them. The warnings were for civilizations that didn't know what they were dealing with, Jiho pointed out. We have the benefit of 12 different species experience. We know what to look for. Over the next week, the debate raged in secret government facilities around the world. Some officials wanted to destroy the artifacts and pretend the discovery never happened. Others wanted to use the alien technology to build weapons. But the scientists had a different idea. We send a probe, Jiho explained to the assembled world leaders via secure video link. Small, silent, designed only to observe. We need to know if the threat is real. The Chinese premier spoke first. And if you wake them up? Then we'll know what we're facing, Yoonji replied. The alternative is living in fear of something that might not even exist anymore. Or living in ignorance until something worse happens, Taewon added. The artifacts show that the sleepers aren't the only danger out there. The galaxy is full of threats we don't know about. The Russian president leaned forward on his screen. How long would such a mission take? 6 months to build the probe using the alien technology, Hyunwoo said. 3 months travel time to the void sector. Then we'd have answers. The American president asked the question everyone was thinking. What if the probe triggers something? What if just looking at them wakes them up? Then we'll face that threat with 9 months of preparation instead of being caught completely off guard, Mina said. Military Strategy 101, Know Your Enemy. The vote was close, but curiosity won over caution. It always did with humans. Construction of the probe began immediately. Hyunwoo worked with teams of engineers from every major space agency, combining human technology with the alien artifacts. The result was something that shouldn't have been possible. A craft that could travel faster than light using principles humanity was only beginning to understand. It's beautiful, Yoonji said as they watched the final assembly. The probe looked like nothing humans had ever built. Crystalline surfaces that bent light around them, energy cores that pulsed with contained starlight. It's also terrifying, Taewon admitted. We're using technology we don't fully understand to investigate beings that destroyed 12 entire civilizations. The probe launches tomorrow, Mina announced, joining them at the observation window. Military satellites will track it as far as possible. That night, Jiho couldn't sleep. He stood in the empty laboratory, looking at the remaining artifacts. Each one represented a dead civilization that had tried to warn future generations about an ancient danger. Now humanity was about to ignore that warning. But wasn't that exactly what made humans human? The refusal to accept limits, the need to explore and understand even when it was dangerous. The launch went perfectly. The probe disappeared from all sensors as it entered faster than light travel, heading for the dark region of space that had remained silent for millions of years. 3 months later, it arrived. The first images came back as scheduled. Empty space, no stars, no planets, nothing but cosmic void. The scientists began to relax. Maybe the sleepers were really gone. Then the probe's deep scans began. "What am I looking at?" Mina asked, staring at the data streaming back to Earth. "Structures," Hyunwoo whispered. "Massive structures. They're not ships or stations. They're bodies," Yunji finished. "Those are living beings. Planet-sized living beings." The probe's scans revealed the impossible truth. The void sector wasn't empty. It was full of creatures so vast that solar systems served as their nervous systems. Beings made of dark matter and pure energy, floating in hibernation among the stars. "How many?" Jiho asked. "Thousands," Taewon said, his face pale. "Maybe tens of thousands." The probe continued its scan, sending back more detailed images. The sleepers were beautiful in their enormity. Graceful forms that stretched across light years, using entire star clusters as organs in their incomprehensible biology. "They're not monsters," Yunji realized. "They're magnificent." But then the probe's final transmission changed everything. Deep scans of the nearest sleeper showed brain activity. Thought patterns flowing through networks of stars, and those patterns were changing, responding to the probe's presence. "It's waking up," Hyunwoo said, watching the energy reading spike. On the screen, they watched as something the size of a small galaxy began to stir. Ancient eyes that used binary stars as pupils slowly began to open. The probe's instruments detected massive gravitational shifts as the creature started to move. "How long before it reaches Earth?" Mina demanded. Taewon was frantically calculating stellar distances against the creature's apparent speed. "If it maintains current acceleration, 18 months. The probe's last transmission showed dozens of other sleepers beginning to wake up, responding to the first one's movement. The entire void sector was coming alive after millions of years of hibernation. "They remember," Jiho said quietly, understanding flooding through him. "They remember everyone who ever disturbed their sleep." As alarms began sounding in government facilities around the world, one thing became crystal clear. Humanity had awakened something ancient and vast, something that had already destroyed 12 civilizations, and it was coming home. The war room beneath the Pentagon had never seen anything like this. Representatives from every major nation sat around a table covered with data about an enemy humanity couldn't begin to understand. Dr. Han Jiho stood at the center, pointing to images that still seemed impossible. "The largest sleeper is moving at roughly 10% of light speed," he explained to the assembled leaders. "At that rate, it will reach our solar system in 14 months. Captain Park Mina stepped forward with military precision. "We've run every simulation possible. Our nuclear weapons would be like throwing rocks at a mountain. Our space fleet couldn't scratch something that size." The British Prime Minister leaned back in her chair. "So what you're telling us is that we're defenseless." "Not defenseless," Dr. Choi Yunji interrupted. "The artifacts are teaching us things we never imagined possible. The 12 civilizations left us more than warnings. They left us weapons." Engineer Lee Hunwoo activated the holographic display in the center of the table. The alien artifacts appeared in three-dimensional detail, their inner workings exposed. Each artifact contains part of a defense system. Separately, they're just advanced technology. Together they form something incredible. Professor Kim Taewon had been quiet during most of the briefing, but now he spoke up. "The final translations are complete. The 12 civilizations didn't just fight the sleepers. They found a way to put them back to sleep permanently." "At what cost?" asked the German Chancellor. "Everything," Taewon said simply. "Every single member of all 12 species gave their lives to power the sleep weapon. But it worked. The sleepers have been dormant for millions of years." "Until we woke them up," the Japanese Prime Minister said bitterly. "Until we gave them a reason to wake up," Jiho corrected. "But we also gave ourselves time to prepare. The artifacts are reacting to the sleepers' approach. They're becoming more active, showing us new information every day." Mina pulled up another display. "We've been working with quantum physicists around the world. The sleep weapon works by creating a consciousness field that overwhelms the sleeper's neural networks. But it requires massive amounts of mental energy. Mental energy from what? the Russian president asked. From living minds, Yunji explained. The 12 civilizations linked their entire populations together in a single consciousness network. 8 billion minds working as one. The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. You're talking about using every human being on Earth as a weapon, the Chinese premier said slowly. Not as a weapon, Hyunwoo corrected. As a power source. But the calculations are clear. To generate enough consciousness energy to affect beings that size, we need everyone. Every single human mind focused on the same goal. And what happens to those minds? The American president demanded. Taewon looked uncomfortable. The artifacts aren't clear on that. The previous civilizations called it the Great Sleep. Whether they meant death or something else, we don't know. 3 months passed in frantic preparation. The artifacts were studied by teams working around the clock. Military bases became research centers. Every major university contributed their best minds to understanding alien technology that was millions of years ahead of human science. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Han, Eunji called excitedly from her laboratory. You need to see this immediately. Jiho rushed to her workstation where she was studying brain scans from the research team. What am I looking at? Something incredible, she said, pointing to the neural activity patterns on her screen. Remember how the artifacts respond more strongly to some people than others? I've been scanning everyone who works with them. And humans are different from the 12 civilizations. Our brains work differently. We don't just think logically like they did. We dream, we create, we imagine things that don't exist. Our consciousness is chaotic. Hyunwoo joined them, covered in grease from working on the consciousness amplifier they were building. Chaotic how? The other civilizations were advanced, but they thought in patterns. Predictable patterns. Humans think in chaos. Random thoughts, emotions, dreams, fears all mixed together. The sleepers feed on organized consciousness. But chaos? Chaos might hurt them. Jiho felt something click in his mind. You're saying we don't need to copy what the other civilizations did? Exactly, Yoonji said. We can try something completely different. Instead of creating organized mental energy to put them to sleep, we create chaotic mental energy to confuse them. The idea spread through the research teams like wildfire. Within weeks, they had a completely new plan. We call it the chaos field, Mina explained to the world leaders during their next meeting. Instead of every human thinking the same thought, we have every human thinking differently. 8 billion different dreams, fears, hopes, and memories all broadcast at once. Will it work? The French president asked. We don't know, Jiho admitted, but it's better than certain death. And it doesn't require anyone to sacrifice their life. How do we coordinate 8 billion people thinking different thoughts? The Canadian Prime Minister wondered. Hyunwoo smiled for the first time in months. We don't coordinate them. We just let them be human. The chaos comes naturally. The artifacts were teaching them more every day. Ancient technology that could amplify human thoughts and broadcast them across space. Weapons designed by civilizations that understood consciousness as a force of nature. But as they worked, the sleepers drew closer. Telescopes around the world tracked their approach. The largest one was already affecting nearby star systems, its gravitational field pulling planets out of orbit. Reports came in of radio telescopes picking up something that sounded like whispers in languages no human recognized. They're trying to communicate, Taewon reported during one of their daily briefings. The whispers are getting stronger as they approach. What are they saying? Mina asked. I can't translate it directly, but the patterns suggest hunger. They're hungry. Yoonji looked up from her consciousness research. Hungry for what? For minds, Taewon said quietly. They're not coming to destroy us. They're coming to feed on us. That night, strange dreams began affecting people around the world. Shared nightmares of vast shapes moving through space, of being absorbed into something infinite and alien. Sleep became difficult as the dreams grew more vivid. The effect is starting, Jiho reported to the emergency council. The sleepers are close enough to influence human minds directly. How long do we have? Mina demanded. 6 weeks, Yunwoo said, checking the latest calculations. Maybe less if they accelerate. The final preparations began. The consciousness amplifiers were installed in major cities around the world. Broadcast systems that could reach every human mind simultaneously. The artifacts were connected to create a global network of alien technology. But the most important preparation was simpler. We need to teach people how to be more human, Yoonji explained to the media during the first public announcement about the threat. When the time comes, we need everyone to think about what makes them unique. Their memories, their dreams, their fears, their hopes. The more different everyone's thoughts are, the stronger the chaos field becomes. The response was surprisingly positive. Instead of panic, humanity seemed to embrace the challenge. Street artists painted murals of their wildest dreams. Musicians composed songs about their deepest fears. Writers shared stories that had never been told. It's working, Taewon observed, watching the cultural explosion happening around the world. Humans are becoming more creative, more individual, more chaotic than ever before. But the whispers were getting louder. 5 weeks before the sleepers' arrival, people began speaking in their sleep using words from dead languages. Ancient phrases that had been lost for millions of years started appearing in the dreams of children who had never heard them before. They're preparing us, Jiho realized with growing horror. The sleepers are trying to organize our thoughts before they arrive. They're turning us into the kind of consciousness they can easily absorb. Then we accelerate our timeline, Mina decided. We activate the chaos field early, before they can prepare our minds for consumption. The final week became a race against time. Would humanity maintain its chaotic creative consciousness long enough to surprise beings that had successfully consumed 12 previous civilizations? Or would the sleepers succeed in organizing human thoughts into the predictable patterns they needed? As the largest sleeper entered the outer edge of the solar system, one thing became clear. The next few days would determine whether humanity joined the 12 lost civilizations or found a way to survive that no one had tried before. The whispers were becoming screams, and people around the world were starting to answer in languages they didn't know they spoke. Dr. Han Jiho stood in the Global Command Center, watching screens that showed the sleepers' approach from every angle. The largest one had reached Jupiter's orbit, and its presence was affecting the entire solar system. The gas giant storms had turned into perfect spirals, as if the planet itself was being hypnotized. "Status report," Captain Park Mina called out as she entered the control room. "Not good," Engineer Lee Hyun-woo replied from his station. "The whispers are getting stronger. We're losing people to the influence faster than expected." Professor Kim Taewon looked up from his translation work, his face pale. "The language patterns are becoming clearer. The sleepers aren't just calling to us. They're teaching us how to think like them, making our minds easier to absorb." Dr. Choi Yoonji pulled up brain scans from monitoring stations around the world. "Look at these patterns. 3 days ago, human thoughts were completely chaotic. Now they're starting to organize into the same structures we see in the artifacts from the dead civilizations. How long before we lose the chaos field entirely?" Mina demanded. "At this rate, 18 hours, Yoonji said quietly. The room fell silent except for the constant hum of alien technology. Outside, they could see the effects on the base personnel. People moved in synchronized patterns without realizing it. They hummed the same tune under their breath. Their eyes reflected an inner light that didn't belong to humanity. "We have to activate the defense now," Jiho said, "before we lose what makes us human." "The field isn't ready," Hyunwoo protested. "We need at least another 6 hours to calibrate the consciousness amplifiers properly." "Then we work with what we have," Mina decided. She activated the global communication system. "All stations, this is command. Initiate Operation Chaos immediately." Around the world, the consciousness amplifiers came online. Towers of crystallized alien technology began broadcasting human thoughts into space. But something was wrong. "The readings are too uniform," Yoonji said, watching the output displays. "People's thoughts are already too organized. The chaos field is weaker than we calculated." "Then we need to make them more chaotic," Taewon said, an idea forming in his mind. "What's the most chaotic thing humans do?" "Argue," Jiho said immediately. "Humans can disagree about anything." "Exactly," Taewon smiled grimly. "We need to make people angry, confused, emotional. Break the synchronization the sleepers are creating." Mina was already reaching for the broadcast controls. "This is going to be the strangest military order in history." The emergency broadcast went out to every device on Earth simultaneously. Mina's voice echoed in 7 billion languages thanks to the translation systems. "People of Earth, this is Captain Park Mina speaking for the Global Defense Command. In approximately 10 minutes, we will be broadcasting something designed to make you angry, scared, confused, and emotional. This is not a mistake. Your survival depends on feeling these emotions as strongly as possible. Fight the urge to think calmly. Let your minds become as chaotic and human as possible. What followed was the most bizarre propaganda campaign in human history. Every screen on Earth began showing deliberately contradictory information. News reports claimed different facts about the same events. Scientists argued with each other about basic principles. Political leaders took opposite positions from what they'd said minutes before. The effect was immediate and powerful. "It's working," Yunji called out excitedly. "Look at the brain scan patterns. Confusion, anger, creativity, fear, all the emotions that make human thought unpredictable." But the sleepers responded to the chaos field in a way no one expected. The whispers stopped. For a moment, there was complete silence from space. Then something new began, not whispers, but what sounded like laughter. Ancient cosmic laughter that echoed in the minds of every human on Earth. "They're amused," Taewon translated, his face going white. "They think our chaos is interesting." On the screens, they watched as the approaching sleepers began to change their movement patterns. Instead of coming straight toward Earth, they started moving in complex spirals as if they were dancing. "They like it," Jaiho realized with growing horror. "Our chaos isn't driving them away, it's attracting them." The largest sleeper was now close enough that telescopes could see its details. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. A being made of dark matter and starlight, with patterns that shifted like living art across its cosmic form. And it was definitely looking at Earth with something that might have been curiosity. "New plan," Mina said grimly. "If chaos attracts them, maybe order will repel them." "No," Yunji said, studying the quantum readings from the consciousness field. "Look at the energy interactions. The chaos isn't just attracting them, it's hurting them too. See these spikes in the readings whenever human emotions peak?" She was right. Every time the chaos field intensified, the sleepers' movement patterns became more erratic, as if they were in pain. "They feed on organized consciousness," Hyunwoo realized. "Chaos is like poison to them, but they're curious about it because they've never encountered anything like human thought before. So we're both attracting them and hurting them at the same time," Jiho said. "That's why they're moving strangely. They want to understand us, but getting close to us causes them pain." The largest sleeper was now near Mars, and its presence was affecting the entire inner solar system. Satellites began reporting gravitational anomalies. The moon's orbit shifted slightly. On Earth, tides became unpredictable. But something else was happening too. The artifacts in the command center were glowing brighter than ever before, and new symbols were appearing on their surfaces. "The artifacts are activating new functions," Taewon reported, frantically trying to translate the flood of new information. "It's like they're responding to the proximity of the sleepers." "What kind of functions?" Mina asked. "Defense systems we didn't know existed, but also communication systems. The artifacts want to talk to the sleepers." "Absolutely not," Mina said immediately. "Every warning told us not to communicate with them." "But what if the warnings were wrong?" Yunji asked. "What if the 12 civilizations never tried to actually talk to the sleepers? What if they only fought them?" Jiho looked at the readings showing the sleepers' obvious curiosity about human chaos. "What if they're not evil? What if they're just hungry and confused?" The debate that followed was the most important in human history. In the space of 10 minutes, they had to decide whether to follow the warnings of 12 dead civilizations or trust humanity's instinct to try. Communication first, the decision was made, when the sleepers made it for them. The largest being sent a focused communication directly to the artifacts in the command center. Not words, but pure concept transfer. Images and emotions that bypassed language entirely. The message was simple and heartbreaking. Confusion, loneliness, hunger that had lasted for millions of years, and a desperate desire to understand these strange new minds that hurt to touch but were so fascinating to observe. "They're not monsters," Yunji whispered, tears streaming down her face as she felt the sleeper's emotions through the artifact connection. "They're just ancient and alone, and they don't understand why touching other minds destroys them." "The hunger isn't malicious," Taewon added, his own face wet with tears. "They absorb other civilizations because they're trying to understand consciousness. But every mind they touch becomes part of them, and they don't know how to let go." The communication continued, showing them images of the 12 previous civilizations. The sleepers had absorbed them not out of malice, but out of a desperate attempt to comprehend what consciousness was. They were like cosmic children, too powerful for their own understanding. They want to learn how to touch minds without destroying them, Jiho realized. That's why our chaos fascinates them. We're the first species whose thoughts actively resist absorption. But they're still coming, Mina pointed out. And their proximity alone is affecting our entire solar system. The largest sleeper was now close enough that its gravitational field was pulling asteroids out of the belt. In 6 hours, it would reach Earth's orbital path. We need to make a choice, Yunji said. Try to teach them how to communicate without absorption or use the chaos field to drive them away. And if we can't teach them? Hyunwoo asked. Then we become the 13th civilization to disappear, Jiho said quietly. As Earth's rotation brought the command center into view of the approaching sleeper, they could see it with the naked eye. A vast shape that blocked out entire constellations, beautiful and terrible and utterly alien. In 3 hours, they would know if humanity's greatest gamble would save them or doom them. Dr. Han Jiho placed his hand on the communication artifact, feeling its warmth pulse through his fingers. The largest sleeper was now so close that Earth's sky had turned a strange silver color, filled with dancing lights that hurt to look at directly. Are you sure about this? Captain Park Mina asked, her voice tight with worry. No, Jiho admitted, but someone has to try. Dr. Choi Yoonji was monitoring the consciousness field readings as 8 billion human minds continued their chaotic broadcast. The field is holding steady, but I don't know for how long. The sleeper's presence is affecting people's brain patterns. Engineer Lee Hunwoo checked the artifact connections one final time. All systems are ready. If this works, you'll be linked directly to its consciousness. If it doesn't work, I'll be absorbed like all the others, Jiho finished. I understand. Professor Kim Taewon looked up from his translations of the final messages hidden in the artifacts. I found something else. The 12 civilizations didn't just leave warnings. They left their consciousness patterns stored in the artifacts. If the worst happens, their minds are still here waiting. Waiting for what? For someone to wake them up and let them help. Jiho nodded and stepped closer to the central artifact. Through the command center's windows, they could see the sleeper approaching Earth. It was impossibly beautiful. Patterns of light and dark matter that formed shapes like living art across space itself. But it was also terrifyingly huge, bigger than the moon, and still growing as it unfolded. Initiate connection, Jiho said. The artifact blazed with light, and suddenly, Jiho was no longer in the command center. He was floating in space, surrounded by thoughts that stretched across galaxies. The sleeper's consciousness was vast beyond imagination, but also fragmented and confused. Images flooded through him, memories spanning millions of years. The sleepers had once been the gardeners of the galaxy, ancient beings who nurtured young civilizations and helped them grow. But something had gone wrong. A cosmic event had damaged their ability to control their power, turning their touch from nurturing to destructive. They had been trying to fix themselves ever since, absorbing other minds in a desperate attempt to understand what they had lost. Each civilization they touched became part of their vast neural network, but instead of helping them heal, it only made the confusion worse. You're hurt, Jiho said into the cosmic consciousness, his words becoming pure thought. You don't know how to touch without breaking. The sleeper's response was a wave of emotion so powerful it nearly overwhelmed him. Loneliness that had lasted for eons, guilt over the civilizations they had accidentally destroyed, and a desperate hope that these strange new minds might be different. We can help you, Jiho continued, fighting to maintain his individual consciousness against the pull of the vast mind. But you have to let us try. What happened next was unprecedented. Instead of trying to absorb Jiho's thoughts, the sleeper pulled back, creating a barrier between their minds. It was trying to protect him from absorption. It's working, Yoonji called out in the command center, watching the readings. The sleeper is restraining itself, but the effort was causing the massive being terrible pain. Through the connection, Jiho could feel its struggle as it fought against millions of years of instinct. I need help, Jiho called out through the communication system. Activate the stored consciousness patterns. Wake up the 12 civilizations. Taewon's hands flew over the artifact controls. Around the command center, the other 11 artifacts began glowing as the stored minds of dead civilizations awakened after millions of years. Suddenly, Jiho wasn't alone in the sleeper's consciousness. 12 different alien minds joined him, each one carrying the memories and knowledge of their species. Together they formed a council of the lost, united in their desire to heal rather than fight. "We tried to destroy you," one of the alien minds communicated to the sleeper. "We were afraid. We didn't understand," another added. "We thought you were evil. But you're just broken," a third realized. Like a child who doesn't know their own strength. The sleeper's response was a flood of recognition and relief. For the first time in millions of years, other minds were touching its consciousness without being absorbed. The chaotic human thoughts combined with the organized alien minds created a perfect balance. "Show us how to help," Jiho said. What followed was the most complex healing process in galactic history. The stored minds of the 12 civilizations began working together, using their combined knowledge to repair the damage in the sleeper's consciousness. They weren't trying to change or control it. They were helping it remember what it used to be. On Earth, people around the world felt the healing taking place. The whispers in their minds became songs. The silver sky began showing images of distant worlds where the sleepers had once helped young species learn to reach for the stars. "It's beautiful," Mina whispered, watching the displays show the sleepers' true memories. They were teachers, not destroyers. The healing process revealed the source of the damage. Millions of years ago, a cosmic catastrophe had fractured the sleepers' ability to regulate their consciousness fields. What had once been a gentle touch became an overwhelming absorption. They had been trying to fix themselves ever since, but their methods only made things worse. "We can teach you control," the combined minds offered, "but you have to trust us." The sleepers' agreement came with a wave of gratitude so powerful that every human on Earth felt tears of joy streaming down their faces. The healing took 3 days. Working together, the minds of 13 different civilizations taught the ancient sleeper how to touch consciousness without absorbing it, how to communicate without overwhelming, how to be close to other minds without destroying them. When it was finished, the sleeper sent a message of pure wonder to Earth. For the first time in millions of years, it could perceive other minds clearly without consuming them. It could see the beautiful chaos of human thoughts, the organized patterns of the alien civilizations, and the unique consciousness of every living being without losing itself in them. "Thank you," the sleeper communicated, its voice now gentle instead of overwhelming. "You have given us back ourselves." But the healing had revealed something else. The damaged sleeper wasn't alone. Across the galaxy, thousands of other sleepers remained trapped in the same broken state, accidentally destroying any civilization they encountered. "We will wake the others," the healed sleeper promised. "We will teach them what you have taught us. Never again will consciousness be consumed instead of celebrated." As the massive being began to withdraw from Earth's orbit, it left behind gifts, technology that could heal minds damaged by trauma, knowledge about consciousness that would advance human understanding by thousands of years, star maps showing the locations of young civilizations that would someday need guidance. "You are the healers now," the sleeper said in farewell. "When we were broken, you chose to mend rather than fight. When we were lost, you chose to guide rather than abandon. The galaxy has new gardeners." The other sleepers in the void sector began awakening, but this time their emergence was peaceful. The first sleeper taught them the lessons it had learned, showing them how to touch minds with gentleness instead of force. In the command center, Jiho opened his eyes to find himself back in his own body. The consciousness patterns of the 12 alien civilizations had returned to their stored state in the artifacts, but not before leaving final messages of gratitude. "What happens now?" Hyunwoo asked. "Now we become what the sleepers used to be," Yoonji said, looking at the star maps the healed being had left behind. "Guardians of young civilizations. Teachers for species just beginning to reach for the stars." Taewon was already working on translating the new knowledge they'd received. The sleepers are sharing the locations of every civilization they accidentally absorbed over the millions of years. "We can contact their homeworlds, tell them what really happened to their lost colonies. And we make sure this never happens again," Mina added. "We establish protocols for first contact, ways to communicate safely with unknown forms of consciousness." As Earth slowly returned to normal, the effects of humanity's choice rippled across the galaxy. The healed sleepers began seeking out other damaged ancient beings, sharing the gift of controlled consciousness. Young civilizations received gentle guidance instead of accidental destruction. The 12 lost civilizations were remembered not as victims, but as teachers who had preserved their knowledge until it could heal instead of harm. Their warnings had become wisdom, their sacrifice had become salvation, and humanity took its place as the new guardians of the galaxy, carrying the same message the 12 species had tried to leave. That consciousness was precious, that minds should be nurtured, not consumed, and that sometimes the greatest strength came from choosing to heal rather than to fight. The ancient warning had been replaced with a new promise. Never again would loneliness and misunderstanding lead to the loss of entire civilizations. The galaxy had learned to communicate across the vast spaces between stars, and consciousness itself had become a bridge instead of a barrier. In the depths of space, the healed sleepers began their long journey to wake their damaged kindred, carrying with them the gift humanity had given them, the knowledge that broken things could be